The silent anatomy of happiness. Everyone wants happiness, but most don't even know what it is. They chase it like it's a destination, as if it hides behind the next job, the next relationship, the next achievement. But what if happiness isn't something you find? What if it's something you stop losing? The Stoics knew this long ago, and their message is more relevant now than ever. Happiness is not pleasure. It's peace. Not the fireworks, but the flame that never goes out. Why pleasure isn't the answer. We're wired to think that feeling good is good. That pleasure equals joy. That comfort means we're doing something right. But think deeper. If pleasure were the answer, why are so many people who have everything still empty? Pleasure fades. Peace remains. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." But here's the catch. You cannot be free if you're a slave to every impulse, to every craving, to every mood. The moment you become addicted to comfort, you lose access to happiness, because happiness is born in discomfort well handled. It is the side effect of self-mastery. Discomfort, the unlikely doorway. We avoid discomfort like it's poison. But the Stoics saw it differently. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's the invitation to clarity, to strength, to truth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." In other words, stop measuring life by how good it feels. Start measuring by how aligned it is. Some days will feel empty, but if you live them in truth, you are not off track. You are simply becoming untouchable. And that quiet strength is the root of real joy. The trap of always wanting more. Modern life teaches us this lie. Happiness is out there, you just haven't gotten enough yet. More status, more validation, more success, more distraction. But the Stoics knew, the more you need, the less you own. Seneca said, "Being poor is not having too little, it is wanting more." And so they trained their mind, dummy, not to chase more, but to desire less. Because when you desire less, you expand. You stop being pulled by every shiny thing. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop outsourcing your joy to the future, and in that moment, you come home to yourself. Joy without conditions. Ask yourself, if nothing changes in your life, can you still be content? If no new relationship arrives, if no promotion comes, if the applause stops, if the dream takes another year, or never comes, can you still breathe deeply? Can you still smile in the quiet? Can you still walk with grace? If the answer is no, then you are living in delay. But the Stoics remind us joy is not earned. It's uncovered when you remove the noise, when you question your cravings, when you accept the moment as it is. You find something shocking. You don't need more. You need less distraction from what's already enough. The weight of expectations. Most pain isn't from life. It's from your idea of how life should be. That's the Stoic revelation. Life doesn't owe you easy. It doesn't owe you predictable. It doesn't owe you fair. And if you keep waiting for it to make sense before you allow yourself to be happy, you'll die waiting. Happiness begins the moment you drop the should. It should have worked out. They should have stayed. I should be further by now. Should is a prison. Reality is the key. Learn to love what is, and you begin to rise. Learning to want what you have. This is the deepest Stoic principle. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." It's not just about minimalism. It's about shifting your attention from craving to gratitude, from future to present, from absence to abundance. You don't need to force yourself to be happy. You need to stop forgetting you already have enough to begin. You woke up today. You are breathing. You can think. You can choose. You can feel. You can love. You can rebuild. And from that place, everything becomes a bonus. Stop performing. Start living. We're trained to chase applause, to display our joy, to prove we're okay. But silently attractive people, the deeply happy ones, don't need to prove anything. They don't post every victory. They don't explain every piece. They live their philosophy without marketing it. That's Stoicism in motion. That's joy without performance, and that kind of joy, that's contagious. It's not about being loud. It's about being real. You're not broken. You're just distracted. The path to happiness isn't complicated. It's just quiet. So quiet that most people miss it. It's not waiting in the next achievement. It's hiding behind your own noise. You are not broken. You are buried under habits that don't serve you, thoughts that don't belong to you, and expectations that were never yours. Remove them gently. Return to stillness. Relearn presence, and watch as happiness stops being a chase and becomes your default state. The stillness that holds joy. We've been taught that joy is loud, that it explodes in laughter and dancing and cheering crowds. But the Stoics knew a different kind of joy, the one that arrives in silence. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need an audience. It shows up when you've cleared the inner noise and can finally hear yourself think. This kind of joy doesn't depend on a good day. It's born of a good relationship with yourself. The power of inner approval, I assume. People are exhausted, not by life, but by the endless pursuit of being approved. They don't feel free until someone likes them, until someone validates their decision, until someone says, "Yes, you're doing okay." But the Stoics flipped that. They said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because the moment you free yourself from other people's opinions, you reclaim your energy. And that energy, that's the raw material of happiness. It's not about being praised, it's about being centered. The fallacy of control. You can't control how people see you. You can't control outcomes. You can't control what stays or leaves. But here's what you can control. Your reaction, your rhythm, your rituals, your standards. And when you master that, you find something strange happens. You stop needing the world to cooperate in order to feel peace. You become the source, not dependent, not reactive, but initiating joy from the inside out. That's what the Stoics trained for. Not to suppress emotions, but to own them. Saying yes to what is most suffering is a resistance to what already exists. Pain hurts more when we say, "This shouldn't be happening. I don't deserve this. This wasn't the plan." But reality doesn't follow our plan. It follows its own. So the Stoics practiced a radical shift. Instead of resisting life, they embraced it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So next time you feel blocked, don't curse the wall. Ask what it's teaching you, because happiness doesn't mean life is easy. It means you're in agreement with life as it is. Detachment without apathy. There's a beauty in learning to let go, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. Silently happy people aren't emotionless. They just know how to release without bitterness. They love fully, but without possession. They dream boldly, but without dependency. They enjoy deeply, but without addiction, because they've discovered the truth. The more tightly you grip, the more joy slips through. Let go. Not because you don't care, but because you trust life enough to not control every outcome. That's real freedom. And freedom is happiness. Freedom from the outcome you trained. You tried. You showed up, but it didn't go your way. Now what? The average mind panics. The average ego breaks. But the Stoic mind says, you did your part. The rest was never. Yours. Happiness begins when you stop tying your peace to results and start tying it to effort. You won't win every time. You won't be understood every time. You won't get the outcome every time. But you can win your response every time. And when you do, you've already won something greater than success. You've won yourself. Choosing meaning over mood. Some days, joy feels distant. Your energy is low. Your motivation is gone. Your thoughts feel heavy. On those days, most people check out. They scroll. They distract. They numb. But the quietly joyful person chooses meaning over mood. They show up for their routine. They tend to their mind. They take the walk, drink the water, say the affirmation, not because they feel like it, but because they know it matters. They understand. Happiness isn't a constant high. It's a commitment to what keeps you aligned, especially when you don't feel like it. The joy of enough. You don't need more. You need to realize you have enough. Enough breath, enough time, enough self-awareness to begin again. The Stoics practiced this daily. They imagined losing everything, so they could return to the present with deep appreciation, not for luxury, not for status, but for the small things. A quiet moment, a calm heart, a good friend, a clear conscience. Those are the riches of a wise life. And the person who feels rich in simplicity, they glow with a joy this world cannot buy. The unseen ingredients of a joyful life. Happiness isn't a spark. It's not found in moments of ecstasy. It's not measured in highlights, applause, or dopamine spikes. Happiness, real happiness, is a slow burn. It's built quietly, repeatedly. Internally, like a garden, not a firework. You don't chase it, you cultivate it. And the Stoics? They were gardeners of the soul. The joy of emotional ownership. They never said, don't feel. They said, don't be owned by what you feel. There's a difference. Silently happy people allow emotion to pass through, but they don't let it drive. They feel sadness but don't drown in it. They feel anger, but don't explode. They feel desire, but don't bow. Because their joy isn't an emotion. It's an orientation. It's the result of clarity, discipline, and self-trust. And that kind of joy, it's not shaken easily. The mind is the master. If your peace depends on your environment, you are enslaved. If your mood changes with every comment, headline, or message, you are being ruled by things that don't deserve your power. The Stoics knew happiness doesn't come from a perfect world. It comes from a trained mind. Train your mind to stay centered, to return to breath, to focus on what is, not what if. Because when the mind is mastered, the external world becomes irrelevant. You don't control the wind. You adjust your sail, and that inner steadiness becomes your quiet joy. Letting simplicity shine. You don't need to do everything. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be everywhere, please everyone, or post everything. You just need to live. Well, that means wake up early, move your body, feed your mind, speak kindly, Keep promises. Forgive slowly. Pause often. Say thank you. Simple? Yes. But simplicity, done consistently, builds a beautiful life. And a beautiful life creates silent joy. Resisting the rush, the world is in a hurry. Everyone's sprinting. To what? Even they don't know. But the Stoics walked slower. They understood. Speed is not clarity. More is not better. Urgency is not truth. They weren't lazy. They were present. And silently joyful people follow that rhythm. They're not rushing to arrive. They've already arrived. In this moment. And in that slowness they notice, they breathe, they feel. And happiness of the real kind requires presence. Doing what matters. Repeatedly. You don't need motivation. You need rhythm. Because motivation fades. But rhythm sustains. The Stoics weren't waiting to feel inspired. They acted from principle, not emotion. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being." In other words, you don't need to feel amazing to live well. You just need to show up, day after day, task after task, choice after choice. And the compound effect of that rhythm, it's called a life you're proud to live. That pride, quiet, honest, unshakable, is the soil of true happiness. Expect nothing. Appreciate everything. This might be the Stoics' most radical idea. Let go of expectations, and joy returns. They practiced negative visualization, imagining the loss of what they loved, not to be morbid, but to remember how precious life is right now. Because entitlement kills joy. Expectation chokes presence, but appreciation, it revives everything. Appreciate the small, the slow, the imperfect, the now, and happiness stops being rare and becomes constant. Live like you already have what matters because you do. The breath in your lungs, the wisdom in your scars, the stillness waiting beneath your chaos, the people you haven't fully thanked, the sunsets you didn't notice, the peace waiting at the bottom of your next exhale. You already have enough, not someday. Today, the Stoics didn't promise a perfect life. They offered something better, a clear one, a present one, a resilient one. And from that kind of life, happiness blooms, not in noise, but in stillness. The quiet revolution of joy. Most people think happiness is an escape, an exit from struggle, a shortcut to ease. But the Stoics taught us something far more powerful. Happiness is not escape, it's engagement, with reality, with responsibility, with what is. It doesn't require everything to be perfect. It only requires you to stop resisting life as it is. That shift, from chasing to choosing, is where joy is born. What you tolerate teaches you. Every time you betray your values for comfort, you teach your nervous system that peace comes from avoidance. But real peace comes from alignment. Silently joyful people don't avoid hard things. They face them calmly. They say no when it's unpopular. They stand firm when it would be easier to disappear. And in that firmness, they build something better than pleasure. They build self-trust. And self-trust is the backbone of happiness. Living in accord with nature. The Stoics spoke often of living according to nature. But this wasn't about trees and stars, it was about essence. Your nature as a human is to grow, to serve, to act with reason, to love with depth, to die with dignity. When you live against that nature, you suffer. When you live with it, you thrive. Happiness is not in the resistance of life. It's in the acceptance of its nature, and the discipline to live in harmony with it. Choose to suffer. Less pain is part of life. But suffering? That's optional. Suffering begins when we demand life be different, when we personalize setbacks, when we add storylines to pain. This always happens to me. I'm cursed. I'm not enough. But remove the story, and pain becomes clean. It passes. It teaches. It leaves wisdom behind. Silently joyful people suffer less not because they're lucky, but because they've stopped writing stories that don't serve them. They meet life as it is, and in that raw meeting, they heal. Your joy is no one else's responsibility. No partner, no parent, no boss, no follower count is responsible for your inner world. Waiting for someone else to make you feel something is giving away the key to your own freedom. Silently joyful people have taken it back. They no longer say, "You made me feel." They say, "I chose to feel." That shift rewrites everything, because when joy is yours to generate, nothing can steal it. Not criticism, not rejection, not failure. It might shake you, but it won't own you. Happiness is not a personality. It's a practice. Some people think happiness is for the naturally optimistic, the extroverted, the cheerful, but the Stoics knew better. Joy is not about personality. It's about practice. It's found in the morning you wake and choose not to scroll, in the argument where you choose to breathe, in the moment of fear where you choose to act anyway, in the hard truth you choose to speak, in the old pain you choose to feel and release. Happiness is built one moment, one choice, one principle at a time, and that slow, steady build, that's what makes it real. The joy of doing the right thing, especially when no one sees. They don't post about every good deed. They don't perform their virtue, because silently joyful people understand the reward of doing the right thing is being the kind of person who does the right thing. Not applause, not recognition, but integrity. That kind of joy is internal, private, sacred. It doesn't rise and fall with opinion. It rests in the bones. And once you've tasted that kind of joy, you no longer beg the world to see you. You've already seen yourself and liked what you saw. Your relationship with reality is your joy. You can't negotiate with reality. You can't argue with it. You can only align with it or suffer. The Stoics accepted death, loss, injustice, and pain as part of the human experience, and in doing so, they unlocked joy that didn't depend on life being easy. Their minds were free because they stopped trying to control the uncontrollable, and that freedom, that serenity in the face of what is, became a joy no one could take from them. You can build that too, not by avoiding reality, but by finally befriending it. In a world built on urgency, distraction, and fear of missing out, to be at peace is a revolution. To wake up and not scroll, to walk slowly, to breathe fully, to say no without guilt, to not need more to feel enough. That kind of life, it doesn't scream, it whispers, but its echo can be heard for miles. The bravery of contentment, it's easy to want more, to chase the next upgrade, to never settle. But you know what's rare? To look around and say, this is enough. I have enough. I am enough. Not because you've stopped growing, but because you've stopped escaping. Contentment isn't laziness. It's courage. The courage to stop running, to stop proving, to start living right where you are. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, and to do that is to be braver than most." Stop auditioning for joy. You don't need to. Earn your right to feel okay. You don't need to wait for permission. You don't need to qualify by achieving something first. You can be peaceful now. Even if you're healing, even if it's uncertain, even if it's unfinished. The Stoics knew life is always unfinished. You are always becoming. So stop holding joy hostage to the future. Let it breathe now. In the middle of the work, in the middle of the unknown, in the middle of this moment, exactly as it is. The deep work no one sees. There's a kind of happiness that doesn't look like joy. It looks like waking up early even when no one's watching. Sitting in stillness when it would be easier to scroll. Owning your mistake instead of blaming. Letting go without closure, forgiving someone who'll never say sorry. Choosing peace when revenge would feel better. Doing what's right, even when it hurts. This is the deep work. Invisible, uncelebrated. Hard, but silently. This is where joy is forged. Not in comfort, but in character. You are not missing anything. It's easy to believe the lie that you're behind, that you're missing out, that everyone else is happier, further, more fulfilled. But that's noise, illusion, projection. The Stoics would remind you, you are not missing anything essential. Everything you need to build a full life is already within reach. Your breath, your reason, your choices, your attention, your courage. Joy doesn't come from having more. It comes from not needing more to feel whole. Build a life that doesn't need escaping. From don't wait for vacations to feel free. Don't wait for weekends to feel alive. Don't wait for someone else to bring joy. Build a life, daily, patiently, imperfectly, that feels like home to your soul. Not loud, not perfect, but real, aligned, quietly powerful. A life where your habits reflect your values. Your space supports your peace. Your relationships honor your heart. Your days are shaped by intention, not obligation. That's the real dream. And it's not far away. It begins with one conscious choice. Joy is the side effect, not the goal. The Stoics didn't chase happiness. They chased virtue, alignment, wisdom, and as a side effect, they found something stronger than pleasure. They found meaning. So if you feel empty, don't ask, how do I feel better? Ask, what can I build today? What can I honor? What can I live by? Regardless of how I feel? Because when your life is grounded in meaning, joy stops being a chase. It becomes a byproduct of who you are. The quiet foundations of fulfillment. Not all joy looks like laughter. Not all peace feels like stillness. And not all freedom comes with celebration. Some of the deepest happiness comes quietly, like the sunrise no one claps for, but everyone feels. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It simply exists, and inside those who live in truth. The Stoics didn't teach us how to get happy. They taught us how to become whole. The strength of a regulated nervous system. You want happiness? Start with nervous system regulation, because if your body is always in panic, no amount of success will make you feel safe. Silently joyful people have trained their breath, their response to stress, their ability to return to calm, quickly, reliably, gently. They don't panic at every inconvenience. They don't overreact to emotion. They notice, they accept, they respond. And that quiet physiological power, it becomes spiritual peace, because when your body feels safe, your mind can finally rest. You don't have to be happy all the time to be happy. We've been sold the lie that real happiness means constant positivity. But the Stoics knew better. You can be grieving and still be grounded. You can be uncertain and still be grateful. You can feel sadness and still be whole. Real happiness is roomy. It makes space for everything, not just joy. It says, even now in this difficulty, I will not abandon myself. That is peace. That is presence. That is the real face of happiness. Freedom from the opinions of strangers. There's a weight you carry when you let the world define your worth. A weight of constant comparison, of hidden shame, of trying to be someone you're not just to feel momentarily accepted, but silently joyful people. They've laid that weight down. They're not here to be admired. They're here to live. And living doesn't require a comment section. They act with integrity, not to impress, but because it's who they are. And when you no longer live for validation, you begin to live for truth. That truth sets you free, and in freedom, joy rises without trying. Let small moments matter. You want to change your life? Start by paying attention to the sunlight through your window, the warmth in your chest after a kind word, the way tea feels on your tongue, the silence between deep breaths. These are not small. These are everything. The Stoics didn't wait for grand events to feel alive. They found meaning in the mundane, beauty in what others overlook, and by doing so, they were rich in ways the world will never understand. Because happiness is noticing. And the one who notices deeply feels deeply. Your morning is a mirror. The way you begin your day sets the tone for how you relate to life. Do you begin with noise or with stillness? Do you begin with urgency or with presence? Silently joyful people don't wait for the world to offer peace. They create it with ritual, with breath, with choice. A moment of intention in the morning is not self-indulgence. It's self-leadership. It tells your nervous system, we are safe, we are centered, we choose clarity, and from that moment, happiness can rise, not as a goal, but as a natural response to alignment. Let life be enough without being perfect. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need to get everything right. You just need to keep showing up with honesty, with care, with presence. The Stoics never promised control. They promised agency, the ability to choose, again and again, what honors your values. And in those small, repeated choices, life begins to feel like yours, not flawless, not easy, but worthy. And sometime, worthy is more than enough. The quiet foundations of fulfillment. Not all joy looks like laughter. Not all peace feels like stillness. And not all freedom comes with celebration. Some of the deepest happiness comes quietly. Like the sunrise no one claps for, but everyone feels. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand attention. It simply exists, inside those who live in truth. The Stoics didn't teach us how to get happy. They taught us how to become whole. The strength of a regulated nervous system. You want happiness? Start with nervous system regulation. Because if your body is always in panic and no amount of success will make you feel safe. Silently joyful people have trained their breath, their response to stress, their ability to return to calm, quickly, reliably, gently. They don't panic at every inconvenience. They don't overreact to emotion. They notice, they accept, they respond. And that quiet physiological power? It becomes spiritual peace, because when your body feels safe, your mind can finally rest. You don't have to be happy all the time to be happy. We've been sold the lie that real happiness means constant positivity, but the Stoics knew better. You can be grieving and still be grounded. You can be uncertain and still be grateful. You can feel sadness and still be whole. Real happiness is roomy. It makes space for everything, not just joy. It says, even now in this difficulty, I will not abandon myself. That is peace. That is presence. That is the real face of happiness. Freedom from the opinions of strangers. There's a weight you carry when you let the world define your worth. A weight of constant comparison, of hidden shame, of trying to be someone you're not, just to feel momentarily accepted. But silently joyful people, they've laid that weight down. They're not here to be admired. They're here to live. And living doesn't require a comment section. They act with integrity, not to impress in, but because it's who they are. And when you no longer live for validation, you begin to live for truth. That truth sets you free. And in freedom, joy rises without trying. Let small moments matter. You want to change your life? Start by paying attention to the sunlight through your window, the warmth in your chest after a kind word, the way tea feels on your tongue, the silence between deep breaths. These are not small. These are everything. The Stoics didn't wait for grand events to feel alive. They found meaning in the mundane, beauty in what others overlook. And by doing so, they were rich in ways the world will never understand, because happiness is noticing. And the one who notices deeply feels deeply. Your morning is a mirror. The way you begin your day sets the tone for how you relate to life. Do you begin with noise? Or with stillness? Do you begin with urgency? Or with presence? Silently joyful people don't wait for the world to offer peace. They create it, with ritual, with breath, with choice. A moment of intention in the morning is not self-indulgence. It's self-leadership. It tells your nervous system, we are safe, we are centered, we choose clarity. And from that moment, happiness can rise. Not as a goal, but as a natural response to alignment. Let life be enough without being perfect. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to explain everything. You don't need to get everything right. You just need to keep showing up. With honesty, with care, with presence. The Stoics never promised control. They promised agency, the ability to choose, again and again, what honors your values. And in those small, repeated choices, life begins to feel like yours. Not flawless, not easy, but worthy. And sometimes our worthy is more than enough. The stillness that becomes you. There's a kind of peace that doesn't just calm you. It becomes you. It lingers in the way you move, the way you speak, the way you choose, without urgency, without apology. This isn't detachment. It's not withdrawal. It's maturity, because silently joyful people don't carry peace like an accessory. They embody it as a lifestyle, as a rhythm, as a state of being. And once peace becomes part of who you are, happiness is no longer a place to arrive. It's simply home. Radical acceptance of the uncontrollable. The Stoics never said, "Be happy no matter what." They said, "Be grounded in what you can control. Be graceful with what you can't." You can't stop change. You can't freeze love. You can't pause time. You can't demand fairness, but you can show up, you can be kind, you can speak truth, you can breathe, you can release. That shift from control to clarity is where quiet joy is born. Not in the world bending to your will, but in you. Learning how to bend with the world, becoming immune to the noise. There's too much noise, too many opinions, too many headlines, too much distraction posing as importance. But the Stoic life is a quiet rebellion. It says, I don't need to react. I don't need to respond. I don't need to engage. And in that still refusal, you preserve your center. Silently joyful people don't just unplug from screens. They unplug from reactivity. They filter what enters their mind. They protect their inner garden. They don't let everything in because they know peace is not found in reacting to less. It's found in needing to react to nothing. The discipline of joy. Yes, joy is a discipline. It's not something that arrives. It's something you honor with your posture, your breath, your space, your food, your tone, your thoughts. You train your nervous system to stay open. You train your mind to notice beauty. You train your body to move with grace. You train your soul to forgive without permission. And all of this, it becomes your life's vibration. That vibration is what people feel long before you say a word. The joy of missing out, we glorify being everywhere, seeing everything, having all experiences. But silently joyful people love the quiet no, the sacred absence, the intentional opt-out. They don't chase what doesn't align. They don't attend just to be seen. They don't say yes to prove they're okay, because they know. Saying no to what isn't aligned is saying yes to what's true, and nothing brings more peace than living by what you truly value, not what temporarily excites you. Joy that survives the storm. Here's the real test. Can you stay centered when it all falls apart? When plans collapse? When love ends? When loss knocks on your door? Can you still be kind to yourself? Can you still breathe slowly? Can you still return to presence without pretending nothing hurts? The Stoics didn't teach denial. They taught depth. And in that depth you find the kind of joy that doesn't need the weather to change, because you've become the shelter. You don't have to prove you're okay to be okay. This one will free you. You don't have to be seen healing to be healing. You don't have to post about your growth to be growing. You don't need to smile to be at peace. The most profound joy is often invisible. It's in the silence you've made peace with, the wound you've stopped scratching, the day you didn't give up on and didn't tell anyone. That's where the real happiness lives, not in display but in dignity. The philosophy of enough. You've been told to want more, achieve more, prove more, be more. But what if enough was the most radical idea of all? What if the real path to happiness wasn't through constant expansion, but through alignment? The Stoics weren't minimalist for fashion. They were minimalist for freedom. Freedom from craving, freedom from dependency, freedom from the illusion that joy lives in the next thing. Wanting less to feel. More Seneca said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The person who always needs more can never enjoy what is. The person who slows down desire starts to feel again. Taste returns. Silence softens. Time expands. Suddenly, a walk is a miracle. A meal is a prayer. A deep conversation is wealth. This is not about scarcity. It's about saturation. Letting the present moment saturate your senses without begging it to be different. Living without emotional debt. You know emotional debt. It's the weight of unspoken resentment, the guilt you carry from yesterday, the story you're still repeating in your head long after it ended. But silently joyful people pay their emotional debts daily. They don't wait years to forgive. They don't wait decades to release. They don't stack regrets like souvenirs. They practice emotional cleanliness. Not perfection, but a commitment to not carry what isn't theirs. They feel it, face it, free it. And that freedom becomes lightness. Not the naive kind, the earned kind. Freedom isn't having more options, it's needing fewer. People think they're free when they can do anything. But real freedom is not in having more, it's in needing less. It's not freedom if you're addicted to options, to validation, to constant stimulation. The Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort. They would fast, sleep on the floor, dress plainly, not to suffer, but to remember. I don't need this to be okay. That practice made them strong, because needing less makes you invincible. Stop trying to feel better. Start trying to be better. When you only chase feeling good and wanting more, you'll do anything to escape discomfort. You'll numb, escape, blame, avoid. But when you chase being good, as in good in character, in action, in values, something changes. You stop needing the world to cooperate. You stop waiting for circumstances to align. You start aligning yourself. And that kind of alignment, it doesn't always feel good in the short term, but it creates a life you can respect. And a life you respect becomes a life you enjoy. Discipline is a form of love. Most people associate discipline with rigidity, restriction, punishment. But the Stoics saw discipline differently. Discipline is devotion to who you want to be, to the life you know you're capable of, to your future self. Every time you hold a boundary, you tell yourself, I matter. My peace matters. My energy deserves to be directed, not scattered. And from that consistency, happiness grows quietly, not as an achievement, but as a side effect of living in truth. You don't need to fix everything. You need to be with it. Not every wound needs healing. Some just need holding. Not every emotion needs solving. Some just need space. Silently joyful people don't overcorrect. They don't rush into repair mode. They've learned the power of sitting with discomfort without letting it define them. That stillness becomes strength. That softness becomes sanctuary. And that sanctuary, that's where happiness waits. Not in resolution, but in relationship with reality. Happiness is what happens when you stop running from pain, running from stillness, running from being alone, running from your own reflection. But the Stoics stopped running. They turned toward discomfort. They sat with truth. They trained themselves to stay, and in that stillness, and they found something better than temporary relief. They found peace with life as it is. And from that peace, joy quietly bloomed. No chase, no performance, just returning to the breath, to the self, to the now. The honest life is the joyful life, not the perfect life. Not the admired life, not the curated, aesthetic, socially approved life, but the honest one. A life where your values aren't props, they are practiced. A life where your joy isn't performative, it's present. A life where your peace isn't dependent, it's embodied. And that kind of life then creates a happiness that is unshakable, because it wasn't given by the world. It was grown from within. The cost of lying to yourself: you can fake it for a while, you can pretend you're okay, you can convince the world, but you cannot fool your nervous system. It remembers every avoidance, every suppressed truth, every yes you meant to say no to. Every time you abandoned yourself for peace and then lost both. Silently joyful people don't perform wellness. They pursue honesty, even when it hurts, even when it means letting go, even when it means changing course, because they know nothing is heavier than pretending. Honor over ease. It's easier to stay silent when truth feels disruptive. It's easier to indulge than to abstain. It's easier to conform than to lead. But the Stoics didn't chase what's easy. They chased what's right, not for perfection, but for peace of mind. Because every time you honor your values, you add one more brick to the foundation of a joyful life. The world may not reward it, but your soul does. And the soul's reward is a quiet life of deep self-respect. That is the bedrock of joy. Self-compassion is not self-indulgence. You won't always get it right. You'll fall short. You'll regress. You'll forget. But silently joyful people don't shame themselves into discipline. They forgive themselves into freedom. They don't coddle themselves, but they don't abuse themselves either. They speak gently to their own hearts, especially in the places that still hurt, because self-compassion isn't weakness. It's wisdom, the wisdom to know that healing isn't linear, and happiness isn't perfection. It's the ability to keep coming back to yourself with kindness. Solitude is not the enemy. Most people run from solitude. They fear the silence. They flood it with noise. But the Stoics cherished solitude, and because they knew, if you cannot sit with yourself, you'll never be at peace with anything. Silently joyful people protect their solitude, not to isolate, but to realign. Because in the quiet, you can finally hear your real voice again. And when that voice is clear, so is your life. Joy doesn't need to be explained. Not everyone will understand your peace, your slowness, your new boundaries, your decision to walk away, your refusal to engage. Let them misunderstand. Let them think what they will, because silently joyful people don't trade clarity for comfort. They don't dilute their truth to avoid tension. They don't translate their inner peace into terms that the loud world will approve. Because joy, when it's real, doesn't need defending. It just is, and it stays. You're not late. You're right on time. For your own life, stop watching the clock. Stop measuring against others. Stop waiting for a milestone to finally feel worthy. The Stoics didn't chase timelines. They honored the season they were in. And silently joyful people know everything you need to be at peace is available now. Not after the healing, not after the goal, not after the relationship, the body, the brand, the breakthrough. Now, because the only time happiness can ever be felt is now. Not someday, not eventually, now. A life you don't have to escape. Imagine this. A life that doesn't require distraction, doesn't beg for weekends, doesn't collapse under Sunday nights, doesn't demand validation, doesn't ache for something more, because it already feels enough. This isn't fantasy. This is the quiet outcome of living in alignment with what's real, and it doesn't require perfect circumstances. It requires a different relationship with reality. That is the Stoic path to joy. A joy that doesn't depend on the external. The market crashes, the plan fails, the world shakes, and yet you remain. Not because you're cold, not because you're indifferent, but because your joy is rooted, not rented. You've stopped borrowing peace from things you can't control. You've stopped outsourcing your calm to the weather of life. And in that radical return to self-leadership, you become free. Because nothing is more attractive, nothing is more powerful than someone who carries internal weather. Peace is a skill just like strength, just like discipline, just like wisdom. You practice it, you fall, you return, you breathe through discomfort, you choose again, you clean up your mind, you say no when it costs you, you say yes when it humbles you, and slowly, your nervous system learns that chaos is not in control anymore. You are. And that practiced peace is not something you post about. It's something you radiate. The deathbed test, imagine it. You are at the end of your life. No more plans, no more pretending, no more pleasing. Just you and the truth of how you lived. Ask yourself, did I live gently, but with backbone? Did I speak truth even when my voice shook? Did I show love without needing it returned? Did I walk away when I needed to, and not look back? Did I forgive, not for them, but for my own freedom? Did I live today like it mattered? Because the Stoics lived with death in mind, not to be morbid, but to be honest. And when you live honestly, you start to live joyfully. Not later. Now. What if joy was the default, not the reward? What if happiness wasn't something you earned after fixing, building, changing, achieving? What if it was your natural state and revealed only after the noise is removed? That's what the Stoics believed. You don't become happy. You return to happiness by subtracting what you were never meant to carry. The overthinking, the resentment, the shame, the rush, the performance, the pretending. Strip it all away. And what's left is not emptiness. What's left is you, and you without noise are already enough. Live as if you already belong. You don't have to earn your place. You don't have to hustle for worth. You don't have to compete to matter. You are already here. You are already allowed. You are already enough. When you live like this, you walk differently. You speak more clearly. You love with less fear. You hold space instead of chasing it. And that calm confidence, that quiet rootedness, that's what Stoicism has always been pointing to. Not a life of rules, but a life of return. Return to values, return to breath, return to being. And in that return, happiness isn't something you wait for, it becomes something you are. The stillness that stays. So here we are. 12 parts, thousands of words, countless reflections, and one truth. You are never far from happiness. You are just far from stillness. You don't need to chase it anymore. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to build an empire, get the applause, fix every wound. You just need to return to breath, to now, to yourself. Because joy has always been a homecoming. No one can give you what you refuse to give yourself. Not love, not respect, not peace, not happiness. If you do not believe you deserve it, you will block it every time. So start here. Offer it to yourself. even if it feels unfamiliar, even if it feels unearned. Especially then, because silently joyful people aren't joyful because life gave them everything. They're joyful because they gave themselves permission to soften, to rest, to heal, to begin again. And that permission changed everything. Build a life that feels like a whispered yes, not a scream for attention, not a stage, not a mask. A life that feels like a quiet, steady yes to your mornings, to your body, to your relationships, to your choices, to your values, to your name. When your days start to sound like that, even softly, you begin to glow. Not brightly, not loudly, but unmistakably. Because people can feel when someone has returned home to themselves. And that is the most attractive thing in the world. No more waiting. Don't wait for the world to slow down. Don't wait for approval. Don't wait for the right words, the right time, the right breakthrough. Start now, with breath, with awareness, with one honest choice. You are allowed to feel good. Here, in this skin, in this season, with this past, with this unknown future. You are allowed to feel joy, not because it's easy, but because you've earned it, and simply by continuing to return to what matters most: presence, clarity, self-respect, stillness. Let the world watch you be free. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain. You don't have to share the philosophy. You just have to live it, and when you do, people will feel something shift. They won't know what it is. They'll just know you seem light. You seem grounded. You seem happy. And you'll smile, because you'll know the truth. You didn't find happiness. You stopped fighting yourself long enough to feel it again. And that happiness, it doesn't need applause. It doesn't need proof. It just needs to be lived quietly, wholly, fully.